Hello, my name is Tony Mays. I am the Commonwealth of Learning's Education Specialist for Open Schooling. This is the fifth of 11 presentations, each of which summarizes the key issues in different chapters of Cole's new publication, addressing the needs of out-of-school children and youths through expansion of open schooling. This fifth presentation reflects on Chapter 5 by Dr. Kirsten Brindley. In Chapter 5, we explore the nature and role of monitoring and evaluation, or M&E, in open schooling provision. The discussion in this chapter is organized around 5 key questions. Why is M&E needed? What informs an M&E strategy? What is monitoring? What is evaluation? And what are the implications for future provision? Let us start with the first question, which explores why M&E is so important. The key question is, does it work? Does what we're doing work? If it works, then by sharing the model, we can help others. If it doesn't work, we need to fix it, and as soon as possible. 4 very useful lenses are fitness of purpose. Are we doing the right things? Fitness for purpose. Are we doing things the right way? Value for money. Is it affordable for learners and families? And is it sustainable for the institution or for the country? And transformation. Does it make a positive difference to society? Why do we do monitoring and evaluation? Well, it can help us to gauge the outcomes and impact of our work. It can help us to understand what works and what doesn't work, and then put it right. It can help us to motivate both our stakeholders and our staff. It can ensure accountability to others, particularly funders and governments. It can influence our policy decisions because we can make judgments on the basis of available data. It allows us to share what we have learned with others, and it contributes to the growing body of evidence about what works and what doesn't work in different contexts. Is the data providing information about what it is supposed to? This is a key question. Is it valid? For example, saying that contact sessions happen in small groups may mask the fact that the environment where these are happening is not conducive to learning. Is the data reliable? Is the evidence reliable? Can we verify the truth of the figures that we're looking at? There's no point collecting all this data if we don't analyze it and then use it to inform improvements. And of course, open schooling happens in very diverse contexts, so we have to be able to interpret what is happening within a particular context of operation. So what informs an M&E strategy? A theory of change, remember we discussed this in the discussion on Chapter 1, is a theory about how inputs lead to outputs and how short-term outcomes and long-term impacts flow from the inputs and outputs that we have in place. It's a theory, so it's constantly open to interpretation and amendment. We collect and analyze data about results at key points in the process, particularly just before we start, Stage 1, Needs and Readiness Assessment, then during the program design and planning phase, then during and at the end of program implementation, and then once we have a whole cohort of students who've gone through, we evaluate and report on a complete cycle, and then we effect improvements based upon what we have learned. But we need to be aware that different interests are at play and can deflect us from our goals. So monitoring and evaluation evidence tied to the core goals or intended impacts help us to stay focused and on track. So monitoring and evaluation we can think of as complementary processes in helping us to understand whether we are achieving what it is we want to achieve. So let us focus first on monitoring. Monitoring is the collection and analysis of information about a project or program undertaken while the project program is ongoing. So how many learning subjects have we developed? How many learners have enrolled? How many learners have we retained 3 months later? How many learners successfully complete the course and are ready for examinations? Evaluation is the systematic and objective assessment of an organization, a project, a policy, or a program that might be conducted internally or by external independent evaluators. So was this a good intervention? Is this a good open schooling model for this particular context? That looks not just at the numbers, but it looks at learner satisfaction. It looks at what learners who have completed the program go on to do next. So it tends to have both a quantitative and a qualitative element and takes place over a period of time, usually towards the end or at the end of each cohort. Remember that the M&E plan is for operationalizing your results framework, but also needs to include other key elements to ensure that the cycle is continuously followed. Data collection is inherent to the model. We have to think about what data we need, when we're going to collect it, who is going to collect it, how we're going to collect it. And we need to link the data that we're collecting to the output or outcomes we want to achieve, and then work out a system for verifying that that data is valid and accurate. So an output is a measurable product that results from a certain activity, whereas an outcome is a change in something. Usually an output is tangible. You can see the product. For example, the number of courses offered, the number of people trained. These outputs hopefully lead to the intended outcomes. You can train people on financial literacy and accessing credit, for example. But just having trained them, the output doesn't necessarily result in them accessing credit, which is your intended outcome. An indicator is a variable that is used as a measure of the delivery of the project or program outputs and the contribution of the intervention to the achievement of the outcomes. Reporting against indicators helps us to show that a project or a program has met its objectives. Indicators should be specific, measurable, adequate, relevant, and timely. In other words, they should be SMART. It's important to have a clear idea of what the indicators are, so we need to clearly define them up front and align them with the means of verification. This allows us to be able to create a table of here are the indicators and this is what we mean by them, so that all of the people involved in the process have a full understanding of what it is we're looking for. It's also very important in open schooling to be able to disaggregate the data by sex, by age, and other variables, given that one of the reasons we go into open schooling is to try and increase access and success for more learners who are not reached by ordinary mainstream schooling. The means of verification tell us where and how the information about the indicator can be obtained. They are the evidence that we will use to show that the objectives have been met. Examples of evidence are diverse. It depends upon the need. Baseline surveys, follow-up surveys, monitoring of enrollment completion and pass rates, learner tracer studies, and so on. So there are a whole lot of different indicators of the evidence needed depending on where our focus is. So we need to think very clearly about what kind of data is most appropriate to answer what we want to find out. What is feasible then in terms of getting access to that data and the time and resources needed to collect and analyze it. And then trying to get data from different places so that we can triangulate and compare one set of data with another. This can then build into a project log frame, as indicated here, where you have, this is the outcome we want to achieve. These are the indicators that the outcome has been achieved. These are the targets we're working towards. These are the means of verification that we will know that we have achieved these things. And it's also important to think about what are some of the risks or the assumptions that we are making. So what are the implications of this for our future provision? After you have read Chapter 5, we think it would be useful to discuss the following kinds of questions. Why is M&E important for open schooling? What would you monitor in design, development, and implementation of open schooling in your own context? What would you evaluate in an open schooling initiative? When would you monitor and evaluate? How would you monitor and evaluate? Sharing ideas on these questions across different institutions and different contexts can only enrich our understanding of these issues. As with all other COL resources, this presentation is shared under a CC Commons share-alike license. And we thank you for your time and look forward to the discussions.